My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about perfectionism and how it increases or decreases your chances of having a long-term relationship. I also want to tie this into what's called the 6 6s. What's being pushed with a lot of social media influencers and YouTube influencers is this ideal that men should be shooting for called the 6 6s. We'll get into this in a little bit more detail. But first, I want to say up front that anybody who's looking to improve themselves physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, any of these things, I'm all for it. I'm definitely for that. That's what I'm all about. And I help people do that on a daily basis. However, I don't think people should be doing this in order to obtain a relationship. I think you should be doing it to be good to yourself and to be a better person and to reach your full potential. And then the people that you attract, you attract. But I don't think you should be doing it in the service of trying to get into hookup culture or to try to do this, especially to maybe obtain somebody to have a long-term relationship. Because what I'm going to show you today, a lot of these are double-edged swords where you might think that you're moving up the ladder. You might think that these 6 6s are something to shoot for in order to have a long-term relationship, but a lot of it's not going to work. So let's go through these one at a time because, again, not everybody is going to know what this is. Not everybody spends all their days watching YouTube shows. So the first one of the 6 6s would be having a 6-figure salary. How does this play into having a good long-term relationship? Well, there's a lot of evidence here. And what it shows or indicates is that if you do have a lot of money or you're a well-to-do person, you can have a better relationship. In other words, people who tend to be married longer or stay married do tend to have more money up to a certain level. One of the reasons for this is because people in relationships, one of the biggest stresses that they could have is financial stresses. And it's very difficult. You could take two great people that love each other, but if you put them under the umbrella of complete stress all the time with financial issues, it can beat down on any relationship. So if you had a choice between having a good amount of money or being poor, you would choose to have a good amount of money. Now, anybody would tell you this. I have a lot of experience talking to people, and so does everybody else out there. If you've been rich, you've been poor, you're going to say that rich is better. That makes sense. However, does it help you to obtain a person in a long-term relationship? And here's where it's a double-edged sword, is because if you start off and you meet somebody and you already have a lot of money and you're showing all the trappings of being a successful person, how do you know that that person is attracted to you because they really love you? Now, assuming that's what you're looking for, you're looking to be loved and cared about. Again, we're talking about a long-term relationship. We're not talking about a hookup in a bar somewhere. So how would you know? The answer is that it's much more difficult to know. I'll give you an example of this. When I had my radio show, I interviewed many successful people. I'm not going to name any names right now, but I'm thinking of one off the top of my head right now. And the conversation I had with this person is that they had their high school sweetheart and they were in love and they were together for a lot of years. And he became rich, he became famous. And at some point, for reasons that will not be mentioned right now, they ended up having a divorce. When I talked to him about this, I said, well, you're rich and famous now. People know you as that. When you meet women now, how do you know that you, for the rest of your life, are you going to be loved for who you are? Or are you going to be loved for what they see as this famous guy? And he kind of jumped away from the question because he understood the gravity of that question. And he said, well, how do you ever know if you're ever loved by anybody? And so he tried to jump around the question. So I pushed him a little bit more. And that's when he almost broke down in tears and said this particular person knew him when he was just him as a person, nothing famous. And so, yes, even he would admit that it's very hurtful at that point to lose someone who you know that loved you for you. And now when you meet people, when you're successful, it becomes that double-edged sword, because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of women, when they're looking for long-term relationships even, they're looking for someone who's a protector and a provider. And if you are great at that, you're going to attract a lot of people. But how many of them care about you? So it's a double-edged sword. Number two, the 6 sixes is to be 6 feet tall. Well, let's get this off the table right now. Being 6 feet tall is not an achievement. You can't aspire to be that. It doesn't take any talent to be 6 feet tall. You're either born that way or you're not. So what does this mean? Does being 6 feet tall attract more women? Well, technically, yes. If you ask women who they would rather be with, they would say they would prefer to be with somebody tall. That's what they say. On dating sites, that's what you'll see. However, does it really show up like that in real life? No, because only about 15% of men are 6 feet tall or over. But there's a lot higher of a percentage of that are in relationships, so it doesn't make sense. And so you'll see a lot of this. We'll get to this a little bit later, but let's touch on it now. Men have this idea that you have to look a certain way, you have to be muscular in order to get a woman. Well, let's look at that, because about 70% of men are overweight. Are they in relationships, most of those people? Yes, they are. And I hear this from women too. Women will complain all the time, sometimes rightfully so, but I think that there's too much emphasis on it. Women will say, I have to be thin, I have to be skinny, I have to do this, I have to starve myself. Because why? Because men like thin women. Well, is that true? About 70% of women are overweight. Are they having trouble getting attention from men? No. Like when I look around, I see plenty of people in relationships, plenty of people holding hands, plenty of people going out to dinner together. It's a rarity if I ever see somebody below 10% body fat. I almost never see that. And yet they're all in relationships. So we can't buy into this thing about you have to have a certain look in order to be able to be worthy of a relationship. That's not true. So let's look again at this height thing. Now, I'm going to throw in some examples for myself too, because I don't think it's wise just to go by what all these YouTubers just say. You know, we need some anecdotal evidence as well, right? Because it makes sense. So somebody like me, I'm 5'6". In all of my life, and I've lost count now of how many women I've been with. I don't even know. I lost count probably last century. That's a whole nother story. But the truth of this here, I'm 5'6". I don't think I've been maybe turned down twice in my life. In those 2 times, I was turned down for the same exact reason. And it was because there was an awkwardness because I was in their social circle. Now, what does this mean? It means that somebody like me, I think that friendship is a prerequisite in order to date or to think about somebody to be in a relationship. So I want friendship, and I want somebody that's within the social circle of doing the things that I'm doing. However, other people don't think like that. Somebody would think, okay, well, we live close to each other, so if the relationship doesn't work out, how is it going to be? It's going to be weird when we're dating different people and we live right next to each other, so that's too close. Or somebody might say, well, we're working in the same facility, so this could be difficult. So those are 2 separate incidents. However, I have never once, ever been told, you seem to be 5'6", and that's a problem. That's never been a problem. I've never heard that, and I know a lot of people in bodybuilding, such as myself, that are just around my height as well. It's relatively rare to see a bodybuilder that's over 6 feet tall. Almost every bodybuilder is around 5'8", you know, if I'm being generous. And so I've not heard any of them ever heard that being short is a problem. So I think a lot of that is overblown, and I don't think that's really true as well. Let's go on to number 3. 600 horsepower car. Now, I don't mean that they're really measuring to see how much power is there. It's just, let's say it's a nice car. And again, in just being a person, if you like cars and you want to be in a nice car that looks good, a fast car, then by all means get one. But do it for yourself. Don't do it to have some long-term relationship with somebody. That doesn't make any sense at all. And don't use that as a criteria in order to have a long-term relationship. Now, what about a short-term relationship? Now, here I might agree with you. Having a nice car can attract somebody to that because it looks like you have some type of power and status. Although most of the people that I know that are driving around in Lamborghinis, they typically are, they're paying the bill with three different guys and they're driving it at different times of the day or the week, which is totally ridiculous. The kind of girls you're going to get doing that are very superficial girls that, you know, are worth maybe spending a couple of hours with, but not long term. So on another show, I'm going to talk about the short-term relationship or the hookup culture, but today is not that day. So today we're just going for high quality people and for a long-term relationship. Having a car is not going to do that. Now, you do want a car that's reliable. I mean, I'm sure if you care about the woman you're with, you don't want to put her in a position where she's got to take the bus, right, or something to that effect, or you have to take a bus. That's not going to be very good on your self-esteem. But a car that's workable should do it. Now, from a personal stance, I've had a Corvette, I've had a Porsche, I've had multiple BMWs. Yeah, I've had all that. But as well, I've also had a Chevy Chevette, which was one of my best cars, and I had that for like 3 years. So how does it affect women? Well, one of the things, how it affects women, when I had that car, is that a lot of women would know, or they would say that a guy with a certain level of car, they're doing it to make up for some type of sexual shortcoming. And then they would see me with the Chevy Chevette, and they would be very intrigued why a successful guy is driving around in a Chevy Chevette, because I couldn't care less. It started up every day, and it did what I wanted it to do. I could put groceries in it, something I really couldn't do with the Porsche. And so they would actually be more intrigued of why I was driving around in a, let's say, a less than ideal car. Other cars that I've had a Saturn, which nothing says, you know, just being average is that. But in no way, shape, or form has it ever affected anything in terms of the way a woman looked at me. Now, to be honest, when my wife died and I became a widower, one of the things I had wanted to do was to get rid of the Porsche. And one of the reasons for that is because I wanted a normal car because I didn't want to attract the wrong type of woman. And so that might make sense to you, right? Like if somebody's going to look at you just for a car, I didn't want that. I wanted something more average, let's say. And I ended up getting a Hyundai, which is about as basic can be. So no, a car will not make a difference in terms of having a long-term relationship. As a matter of fact, if you want to have a long-term relationship and you're looking to be that guy to start off, you're better off with having like an average car and not attracting the superficial type of women. Continuing, number 4, which would be six-pack abs. As we get into this, first of all, if a woman knows if you have six-pack abs or not, you're already doing pretty good because your shirt's off. So I don't know why we're complaining. So you can have a girl there, let's just chalk it up as a win, and then move on if she doesn't want to be with you after that. Because there's a lot of women out there that will like guys who look a certain way and go for the six-pack ab. But are they there for the long term or for the short term? So again, you have to look at what you want. What type of bait are you using? Are you using bait to attract a very short-term relationship one night? Or are you using bait to attract a long-term relationship? Now, I'm not saying that you should get in shape for either of those. You should be doing it for yourself. Number 1, you want to be healthy. Number 2, you want to look good. What can I add to this? I've been a bodybuilder all my life. I've done a lot of shows. I've won a lot of shows. How has this affected me in terms of having a long-term relationship? I don't think it's affected anything, really. I think it's having curb appeal, so to speak. In other words, people will give you the look, and so you have that. So you're in the door that way. However, there's a lot of girls who are attracted to that type of look that are extremely superficial. So you're attracting the wrong type of girl. I'm not saying get out of shape now to attract the right kind of girl. What I'm saying is that it's not all cracked up to be perfect. If you look a certain way, you're going to attract the right type of girl. That doesn't make any sense. I've not seen that, and I don't have any friends that that's worked with also. So again, working the other way, if you're dealing with women that have low self-esteem or that they're insecure and you look great and you're spending a lot of time doing bodybuilding, they're going to feel less than around you. They're not going to feel very comfortable. And so in one way it's good because you can say you're weeding out the girls that have low self-esteem. So that's true. But does it help you to have a long-term relationship? Or is it getting you to that goal, if that's your goal, by looking like a bodybuilder? I don't see any evidence that that would be true. It would be true to be healthy for yourself and to be confident in yourself. Now, if you have that confidence, that is attractive to women. So again, double-edged sword. There's nothing here that I would say that this is a definite to the path of having a long-term relationship. The next one, number 5, would be having a 6-month break between your last relationship or being out of a relationship for 6 months. Here, I just think that that's a pretty good practice. Not for everybody, you don't have to do that, but being for a girl to look at a guy and judge him based upon has he been, let's see, out of a relationship for 6 months. I don't think that's a bad criteria at all. So let's just throw that one out. The next one is to have a 6-inch penis. Okay, so this is one that guys get all flustered about. First of all, don't spend a second thinking about it. Why? Because you can't control it. It's not an achievement. You were either born with that or you're not. And so if you're not, who cares? And by the way, again, if a girl knows how big your penis is, let's just chalk that up as a win right there because you're already getting somewhere. Now, do you want her long term? Well, if she's going to measure you by that standard and you fall short, you don't want that girl anyway. So that's definitely a win for you. You got what you wanted and get out. Simple. Now, in terms of a long-term relationship, I have never, in all the years I've been alive and doing therapy with people, talking to people, being a trainer, I have never heard one woman say that that's what kept her in a long-term relationship. Never, not once. So use that as some information. Now, as a guy, if you're thinking about this and it's lowering your confidence, which is going to make it difficult for you to be in a relationship, let's talk about this for a second. Number 1, the most reliable tool that you're going to need in bed is your brain and your confidence level. That's number 1. Number 2, it's going to be your ability to be calm, to be loving, to be caring, to spend some time, a lot of time on foreplay. It's going to be on your techniques, such as the most reliable thing you're going to have is your tongue, your fingers, all of this. What's also you need to be reliable here is to have an open mind towards doing things, to openness, toys, all of this. All of this is going to supersede and be much more important than your size. If you want to measure something, measure how long you can make love for. That's much more important than the size of whatever you got. As a matter of fact, if you're a good lover, it wouldn't matter if you had half your size or double your size. It should not change the way you are as a lover. You should still be going through all of the other things that it takes to be a good lover. The size makes absolutely zero difference in anything that you would do, in any of your abilities, and any of your techniques and any of the way you look at sex in general. And if you're a man, you should be putting her first, because if you go first and you just care about your pleasure and you're self-centered, that's the end of the situation. I don't care what you have there. So those are the 6 sixes. Again, from what I've showed you, if you want to have a good life, aim for some of that. You want to make a lot of money, good for you. That's a good thing. You want to have a nice car, that's awesome too. You want to get in shape, I'm all for it, let's do it. But you're going to be very, very disappointed if you think that that's going to help you get girls for a long-term relationship, because they're not always looking for that, and we're going to do that in another show. But let me give you the other 6 sixes that you're going to actually need. Okay, so I'll run down this really quick. So number 1, you're going to want to be confident. That's probably the top of the list. You want to like yourself. You don't want to act like you're trying so hard all the time. I have a friend, he's a really good bodybuilder. He's in his 50s, but every day, just about, he's posting pictures of himself barely, he barely wearing any clothes. Like, listen, he's trying too hard. Women look at that and think it seems very feminine. He's looking for validation all the time. When you're looking for validation all the time, it doesn't show that you're masculine. And so it's going to turn off people. So that's not going to work. You might be somebody's guilty pleasure for a day, for a week, maybe. But you wouldn't look towards a person like that is very feminine qualities. You wouldn't look for a person like that for a long-term relationship. Number 2, you want to have basic life skills. In other words, you want to contribute to the household. Can you do some chores? Is it beneath you to do chores? Is it beneath you to help out the woman that you're with? Do you know some basic maintenance stuff? Here's an area where I fail all the time. It's no excuse, but I was raised, I lived in an apartment my whole life, so I don't know how to fix plumbing and stuff like that. I know these other guys are very masculine. They can come in, they can fix houses, they know how to do electricity, they know how to build an extension to the house. The basic life skills are very attractive to women in terms of having a long-term relationship. Number 3 on the list, intelligence. What else do you want to do with that intelligence would be number 4, is having ambition and using it to better yourself, to better the family, to be able to make more money, to be more valuable to society. And of course, what goes with ambition is to have a good work ethic. So that's very important. Women look at conscientiousness if you want to look at another on the list. Number 5 would be an emotionally intelligent man. This is becoming more and more important as the days go on. We live in a very much of a therapy society right now. When I was young, therapy was not something that people really did. It's not something that people talked about. It's been very much demystified now, and it seems like everybody is on this self-help move, and so you're going to have to move with the times. We need emotionally intelligent men. That includes being empathetic, compassionate, the potential to be a good father. I don't mean somebody that is just going and leaving to work and then coming back late at night and not having any connection with the kids. Somebody that can read them bedtime stories, somebody that can care for them, someone who can get on a knee and see the world from their level, someone who can tie a shoe, these types of things. Someone who's socially skillful, not just at home, but also out in the world. A woman wants that these days. It's going to be a lot more important than a guy who's got a really fast car and a bigger than 6-inch penis, right? Moving on. Number 6 of my 6 sixes would be compatibility, which is the state in which people are able to exist without too many problems or conflicts. We could do a whole show on this, but what does this mean? Your lifestyles want to be able to be merged in a good way. You want to have somewhat of interests that are equal to each other. You want to have the level of trauma that you both bring to the relationship. Is it workable? And if it's not, can you fix it? Are you willing to fix it? You want to have a limited amount of personality clashes. Also, we could talk about attachment styles. We can talk about sexual differences, and here we can mean the frequency that each person wants to have sex, and also the openness. What type of sex do you want? What type of sex are you looking at? These are very, very important issues, far and above these original 6 6s that these people on YouTube are pushing. Let me go over it real quick. 6-figure salary, 6 feet tall, 600 horsepower car, 6-pack abs, 6 months from your last relationship, which that one I actually agree with, and to have at least a 6-inch penis. If you aim for all those things, and by the way, 2 out of those 6 you can do nothing about, you're born with, that is not the way to go to a long-term relationship. That's not going to help you. These other 6 that I gave you will help you immensely in order to have a good long-term relationship. And when we talk about having a long-term relationship, I talk about finding the right person to be in a long-term relationship with. Not somebody that you have to drag through a relationship with, who you are not compatible with, who there are massive personality clashes. There's trauma styles and attachment styles that you just can't seem to get around. So we'll talk about this more in another show. I want to talk about, if you have all of these great qualities, why might people still continue to run away from you? So we'll talk about that later. Hopefully this has been beneficial. My name is Joe Peroni. This is the Rise Above Project. Please subscribe and tell a friend. Thank you.